They said it was impossible, that no African civilization could have built such grand stone walls without mortar, that such splendor, such complexity had to come from elsewhere. But deep in the rolling hills of southeastern Zimbabwe, the ruins of a forgotten kingdom whisper a different truth, one that rewrites the story of Africa's ancient past. This is the tale of Great Zimbabwe, a city once alive with trade, power, and architectural marvel, now abandoned, misunderstood, and misrepresented for centuries. Its towering stone walls remain, silent witnesses to a legacy that colonial historians tried desperately to erase. But who built it? Why was it abandoned? And why has its true history been shrouded in mystery and myth for so long? Let us journey back in time to a land of golden trade routes and spiritual power, where kings ruled behind stone enclosures and the wind carried stories across the savannah. Around the 11th century CE, long before the arrival of Europeans, a powerful civilization rose in the heart of southern Africa. At its center stood Great Zimbabwe, a sprawling city built entirely of granite stones fitted together with such precision they required no cement. Its Great Enclosure, the largest ancient structure south of the Sahara, stood more than 30 feet high and extended over 800 feet in circumference. The architecture, known as dry stone walling, remains one of the most sophisticated examples of indigenous African engineering ever discovered. But Great Zimbabwe was more than just stone walls. It was the heart of a thriving kingdom. Between the 11th and 15th centuries, the city flourished as a hub for trade across the Indian Ocean. Gold, ivory, and iron were exchanged for porcelain from China, glass beads from India, and textiles from Persia. These weren't the transactions of a primitive outpost, they were the hallmarks of a globalized African empire. The people of Great Zimbabwe were likely ancestors of the Shona, a Bantu-speaking ethnic group whose descendants still live in the region today. Their culture was deeply spiritual. Ancestral spirits were honored in sacred rituals. Hilltops became shrines. The famed hill complex, perched above the city, may have served both as a royal palace and a ceremonial center, where the king, known as the Mambo, communed with divine forces. And yet, despite all this, for centuries the very idea that Africans could have constructed such a city was dismissed, distorted, or outright denied. When European explorers first encountered the ruins in the late 19th century, their minds could not accept what lay before them. In 1871, German explorer Karl Mach, one of the first Europeans to study the site, claimed the ruins were evidence of a biblical connection. He insisted that Great Zimbabwe was built by the Queen of Sheba, or perhaps by Phoenicians, thus forcefully inserting Semitic narratives into African soil. He even claimed that a beam of cedar wood he found in the ruins must have come from Lebanon, stating, "I've found the works of Solomon." There was no evidence to support his claim, and the beam was later identified as indigenous African wood. But Mach's interpretation spread like wildfire. British colonial officials were quick to embrace the myth. To acknowledge that Africans had built Great Zimbabwe would contradict the ideology that justified colonization. The belief that Africa had no history, no civilization, no glory before the arrival of Europe in the early 20th century. Archaeologist David Randall Mikiver challenged this narrative. In 1905, after carefully examining the site and its artifacts, he concluded that the ruins were the product of native African workmanship, but his findings were dismissed. White supremacist ideology would not allow such truths to surface. It wasn't until the mid-20th century that professional archaeologists, including Zimbabwean scholars like Peter Garlake and South African archaeologist Roger Summers, unequivocally proved that Great Zimbabwe was built by Africans, specifically by the ancestors of the Shona people. The evidence was overwhelming. Pottery, tools, oral traditions, carbon dating, all pointed to an indigenous origin. And yet, even today, many textbooks across the world still fail to acknowledge the grandeur of Great Zimbabwe. The ruins remain, weathered by time, but their story still fights to be fully heard. One of the most dramatic turns in the city's legacy came in the 1980s, when Zimbabwe gained independence from British colonial rule. The country took its name, Zimbabwe, from the ruins, meaning House of Stone in Shona. The site became a symbol of national pride and cultural identity. No longer would its history be denied. But the mystery remains. Why was the city abandoned? By the 15th century, Great Zimbabwe began to decline. Archaeologists believe a mix of environmental pressures, overgrazing, deforestation, and drought may have strained the land. Political power shifted north to a new capital at Kami. The city emptied and silence settled over its granite walls. Yet some whisper of another cause. Local legends speak of sacred spirits, of curses cast when the city's rituals were disrupted. Could it be that spiritual violation, not just ecological strain, drove the people away? No one knows for sure. The ruins offer no final answer, only questions echoing in stone. Today, Great Zimbabwe is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but its full story is still emerging. Beneath every stone lies a thread of memory, of kings crowned beneath the stars, of traders mapping routes across the continent, of ancestors whispering through the hills. What other cities, buried by time and colonial denial, still lie hidden across Africa? What forgotten powers await rediscovery? The myth of the voiceless continent is crumbling. In its place rises the truth that Africa was never silent. Its stories were buried but not lost. And if you think Great Zimbabwe is the only ancient African marvel that rewrites history, wait until you hear about the lost libraries of Timbuktu or the underwater cities off the coast of Tanzania. There's more to uncover, so much more. If this journey moved you, if it sparked a new respect for Africa's untold past, then let your curiosity speak. Like this video, subscribe to History Off the Map, and tell us in the comments, what ancient mystery should we uncover next? History is not behind us, it's all around us, waiting to be seen with new eyes.